So tonight I'd like to just kind of talk about a lot of things. These are my opinions, what I talk about. They're not the New York Yankees. I'm always going to kind of tell you what I think. I would love positive feedback and questions and disagreements, whatever. We're just going to kind of go on a few topics and get to the crux of things. And I think we all are committed to, trying to make the game better, make it better for the players, make it better for kids. I think we would all agree over the last 20 or 25 years, especially some of us older school guys or guys on this that might have played or coached when you were younger, and some at high levels, I know already, that we're not all pleased with where the game has gone and where it's gone for youth in our country. And at the level that you guys now are running your organizations, it's so well needed because so many kids don't have a place to play. So many people aren't worried about developing players. A lot of things are, as you know, money grabs, and the local situations in a lot of, cities aren't good for kids. And if you can't afford to play, you can't play. So over a time, we all go back at the time we were, everybody was complaining about Title IX and all that, which was so well needed and obviously important and right. But I think we'd all agree that baseball probably at the time suffered the most because of the way the football scholarships were counted. And I've had a big problem with the NCAA for years because we have basically made it, there's so few scholarships and so lack of positive development that some of us grew up playing or coaching when we played 30 or 40 fall games. And besides the scholarship money, you had different Pell Grants and work study and things like that. So basically, over the last 20, 25 years, I think it has a lot to do with the erosion and the depth of the quality of players that we now have. Doesn't mean you don't have great players, and all you guys have probably great players on your team comparably to the rest of the country, but it's been damaging. And it's kind of been to where, we've lost so many minority players. I mean, the percentage when I first joined the Cubs as the farm director in 95, I think there was 19%, 19% African Americans in the big leagues, great athletes. And I think we're down to 6 or 7% now. And I used to be on these committees with Bud Selig because I had the college background, and Bud would put me in the liaison to the NCAA. And it was just a frustrating effort year in, year out because they didn't get it. It wasn't just, we lost a lot of African Americans. We lost a lot of poor white kids, to be blunt, and they had to go play Division II football to get a full ride or things like that. And we also forget that half the country between 17 and 22-year-old kids, our parents are divorced. So even if they could scrape the money together and play travel ball, all of a sudden you could be little Johnny and the best kid in Illinois, and here comes Paul Maneri from LSU into your living room, and he makes a great offer to you. How about 35%? I think Aaron Nola pitched at LSU for 3 years at 25% because that's what you have to do to still win, and split the scholarships up, where my argument always was the third string cornerback that should be playing center field. He's on a full ride, but if he played baseball, only he'd get 30 or 40%. So over time, we've lost a lot of great players that we can't even pinpoint when they stopped playing our game, or maybe they were directed away from at a young age. So I think it's imperative that in your situation, that doesn't mean we still don't have really good players in the country. Obviously, there's high-end players in the big leagues. I don't think there's a depth of it like it was years ago. I don't think there's a depth of it in the draft like there was years ago. But you certainly have guys that are bigger, stronger, faster, throw harder, and are trained differently now. But over time, I think to get the game better, which that's what we all want to do, and to help kids at your level, it's imperative. And hopefully, as many bad things that are going on now in the NCAA, maybe something good will come out of this in the next few years of a lot more scholarships, or schools will get to decide how many they want to give themselves, or maybe there'll be a split in the Super 5 conferences. I heard some mention today. We all heard the USC UCLA situation. I think within a couple of years it's going to be the Big Ten and the SEC with huge amount of money, And then the ACC and the Big 12 and the Pac are going to have to kind of step it up, or maybe we get the Super Five break away from the NCAA in 5 or 6 years, and baseball is given kind of its due respect again, and produce the type of flow that we want on a continual basis. But to me, the NCAA has consistently over 25 years not only taken away the scholarship situation, but they've taken away opportunities to develop. I think for years we all knew you could play 30, 40 games in the fall. You weren't limited to 20 hours a week practice. Now they're limited to how many coaches you can have. My son is a new member of the University of Virginia staff this year, and lucky to be there. But it's really crazy how you can go across the street and 20 assistant football coaches and 3 baseball coaches, and the NCAA wouldn't even approve the extra coach last year. So you people really are in a spot where the development under you and your organizations are very critical, because I think we all know, even at the high school level now, they cut back games, and the schedule's over at the end of April. And, unfortunately, a lot of places it's not given the respect it deserves. The linebacker coach may be the head baseball coach. So what you're doing is vitally important. And as I babble through this, I just want, after all these years, the NCAA to shake themselves a little bit, because I do believe that the avenue of getting the best athletes to play our game again is not build the Compton Academy and not build this complex with 8 fields. It starts with a lot of scholarship money that gives kids a carrot to go to school. And for years, when I got into pro ball, I was ridiculed a lot, because I was the guy that always felt like 80% at least of the kids out of high school should go to college. They weren't ready for that. Some of you guys played pro ball at a high level on this call. As you know, it's not for everybody out of high school. You're not quite ready for it. You're in a different world. And if college baseball was better and had better development, the pro game would be better too. And I used to pound on that. In the old days, guys were happy in pro ball when, we had the new college scholarship plan. We can buy kids out of school and all that. Well, guess what? A lot of those guys weren't ready for it. And major league teams paid bazillions over time to pay off those scholarships. There's no sense putting that in writing to get a kid to sign if he's not ready for it. So to me, there has to be a better balance by the NCAA or whatever group eventually breaks away from them, for the good of the kids' development. Because it's proven fact over time, the kids that come out as juniors that are high picks and great players, they've matured. Not only are they better players, but they matured. But the better development that everyone can put around, not only just the high drafts, but for everybody, I think our game will be much better. And I've been kind of fighting that for years, with not the NCAA was just impossible to deal with. They just would never bend on 15, 18, 20 scholarships. They never got the big picture. And I think one time I had a disagreement with their head guy, because I really felt that they didn't care whether Jim Hendry was playing shortstop at Texas or Spike Owens. I don't think they care. And I think one time a guy made a flippant remark, and I've lived in Omaha a lot of my life, that the people that are watching the College World Series, they don't know the difference either. And then that's really was their attitude, which is pathetic, but just to give you, like I said, I don't certainly know the ins and outs of your organization, but I know the elite people in the game. Travel ball is on this call, and I just think, and what was said earlier was so appropriate. It's about developing the kids that really want to play or need the guidance to play and can't afford it. I think there's some leeway here that's going to be great, because there's a lot of bad things that come out of just, I'm sure you play against some people that aren't at the level you're at, not just talent, but class and character. And it becomes, if little Johnny doesn't get his way, then he wants to go to another team, and he's got to play third base and bat third, or he's leaving. And that also gets us into the other NCAA problems we're going to deal with now too. But I think it's going to be a long process, but I think it starts with the development of kids and having the kids that really want to play have the opportunity. Like I said, I don't think we know how many kids could be playing or should be playing and quit at certain ages, where even at the pro level, when you start scouting guys in high school, we don't even know who should be there that's not anymore. that didn't choose this path. So I think that's, one of your, great important jobs too in your area to get the kids interested. And obviously you do have a heavy hand in developing. So I don't know if that first part makes any sense, or if anybody wants to comment on that, go ahead.
Tim, I've got a quick question for you on that before we jump on the other stuff. What type of conversation does the MLB and representatives in the MLB have with the NCAA? Like, what is that relationship like?
Yeah.
How much sway do you guys have in the professional game to kind of have the NCAA fix some of the problems that you're talking about?
I was probably in, there's a lot of I was had a great relationship with Bud Selig. And so I did a lot more for Bud in the job I had then than I do now, with Rob Manfred. But we found them just so unbending that all their excuse was, we really don't want to add any more scholarships. We'll have to add more sports. We'll have to add more women's sports. They were illogical. I presented a big plan to them once about, look, you can have fall ball and play every weekend, not travel, not spend money, not missing class ever. If you went a 3-hour bus ride, you stayed at the other schools' dorms or frat houses or whatever, like we used to, but they need to play. You don't play 0 or 2 fall games and then get ready for, let's open at Miami, February 19th. There was just never any traction. And then they wanted MLB to subsidize, okay, then a full scholarship that has to go to a minority every year. And my argument was, well, wait a minute, you give one full ride and then you also, you single the minority kid out, which he doesn't want either. And then your 3-hole hitter at LSU or Florida playing left field, he's on 35%. It just doesn't make any sense, and now I'm afraid we're going to get into this situation where the portal and the NIL money is obviously for a few schools is trickling into baseball, and what I think will be a very harmful way, down the road. And I think we have to, kind of worry about what lessons are we going to, teach these young kids that you're trying to make better people too, besides the percentage of guys even on your elite teams. What's the percentage of guys on your teams going to play in the big leagues? 1%, 2%, 5% max, probably, if you dream, right? And you've got the better kids in the country. It just kind of goes hand in hand. And the other thing, which was a big fault of MLB's, and I think this will make some sense to you, for whatever reason, 15 years ago, there was a big push in the MLB office to the owners about dropping the old draft and follow rule, which was, I thought, huge. And it's ruined junior college baseball to a great degree. And that was a place that you, as a non-finished product, but an athlete that maybe got interested in high school, the Lorenzo Cain type, the raw athlete, that if it wasn't for a draft and follow in a year at JUCO, never would have played a day of professional baseball. And kids, it's even more important that we get that reinstated draft wise, I think, now, because the kids that are coming out of high school now that aren't ready, not only can they not play at the SEC level or anything, but a lot of kids even a little better than that are getting stifled because of the portal. Obviously, COVID had a bad effect on the younger kids. So what happens now, there's no play, if you can't go and play right away, which is rare, you're going to sit a year or two, go in the portal, or quit baseball. And if we made the junior colleges better because of the draft and follow rule, then there would be an avenue for more kids to sign. It's good for scouting too. Scouts learn how to scout better. You get to know the families for a year. Kids get to develop, and maybe that athlete 1 year and he's clicking. So he's going to be able to go to a big school, or he goes to the next tier down and still plays college baseball and gets a degree, or he signs. And people forget, like Andy Pettit was a draft and follow. Roy Oswald was a draft and follow. Kevin Millwood was a draft and follow. And they weren't draft and follows because they wanted $3 million and they only got offered 1.5. They really weren't getting recruited by the Pat Caseys or Skip Bertmans and the great college coaches, or even the next year down. They needed to go play. So now that kid, he's going to go play Division 2 or 3 basketball, maybe, or football, or quit. And I think it all kind of goes hand in hand. You don't have to just be the elite guy that gets to go to the SEC or the ACC right away for an avenue to go to the big leagues or get an education. And so that's the side that MLB really whipped on. And it was very bothersome to me.
I had a question just texted me.
Yeah.
How feasible do you think that is with a 20-round draft?
Well, I think we need to push, and the COVID thing really hurt. The 5-round draft was atrocious. I thought the night before it was finalized, it was at least going to be 10.
Right.
And then I don't blame the commissioner's office for wanting to ease it back to 20. But I think, and let's be honest, we all lived in an era where it was 50, unlimited for a while. When I was running the draft for the Cubs, one year was unlimited, and the Yankees and the Rays were going back and forth because George Steinbrenner wouldn't let the Rays draft last, so they took Jim Hendry's cousin in the 97th round. Couldn't play a lick either. But I think in the near future we need to push strong for 30, and I think there's a case like maybe I'm not making it clear as I need to be, but given enough time, I think we could round up enough people to make some sense. And you don't have to sign any more people that year. You might take, sign 15 or 18 and you draft and follow 5 or 7.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't mean they're all going to develop. If you get lucky and 1 or 2 get to sign the next year, maybe 1 or 2 others get to go to school, even if it's Appalachian State, not LSU, or, whatever, Creighton instead of Texas, but I think it's imperative. And I think we would have kept a lot more athletes, because let's not forget the other thing. Economically, it makes huge sense for the kid that isn't privileged and not developed, but needs a place to try to polish his craft. You know how it was for years. People would say, hey, what happened to Miami? They're not as good as they used to be, which are on the comeback now. Or USC stinks. Well, it's $80,000 a year to go there. So who gets more than a half these days? A half is a huge offer, right?
Yep.
So over time, we've eroded the possibilities of developing our game, except if there are people like you that obviously help people that deserve it or need it. But for the most part, when I get my divorce stats pretty good, that if you're divorced and you're living with your mom and she's got 2 jobs trying to make it work, and how the hell are you going to pay for the rest of college? She's scraped up every dollar for 5 or 6 years so little Johnny could play travel ball. Now it's like, hey, and you know how it is. The people that you deal with that aren't as ethical as you, it's always, oh, you come play for me, and you're going to get a scholarship, and then they got the guy with the private lessons all the time. You pay me, and don't worry, you're going to get a scholarship. Like the parents believe there's these 4 rides waiting around the corner, and they're not. So I think that's kind of a real imperative over the next couple of years, trying to get that back. And I think it would really help junior college. For years, I grew up in Florida, and all you guys from California. I mean, there were more prospects years ago on some junior colleges that there were at the University of Miami. Like Paul Maneri's father at Miami-Dade had 37 big leaguers in his career play at Miami-Dade. I mean, and I don't think all those guys are ready to sign out of high school. You know what I mean? So to me, it's all one and the same. And right now, you guys are one of the biggest bridges to get to college baseball, to get kids better and hopefully sign or go to school. And like I said, I'm the guy that has, a lot of years in pro ball now and had a lot of good jobs, but I'm still a believer that the education is the most important for 90% of them. And I do believe that 80 or 90%, even good players, should go to school. And I've been criticized a lot by my peers in pro ball for saying that, but I think it bodes well. You go back and look at college baseball in the 80s and early 90s. We beat the world, everybody, with our amateurs, and even beat Cuba some. When Cuba, half the team, I was at the Pan Am Games and the Olympics in 87, 88. Half the Cuban team could have played in the big leagues, and 5 or 6 of them would have played in multiple all-star games. We could beat everybody in the world and get them every now and then with our college kids. We can't qualify for an international tournament. And now that, and even the Olympics when it was going on, without our pros playing. Well, that's all you need to know of where we've gone on the type of athlete that now goes to school. And like I said, I'm not ripping any, I'm not into the old school, oh, Hendry, everything was better in your era. But I think we'd agree. You go back and look at the 84 and 88 Olympic teams. Palmero, Clark, O.W. McDowell, Andy Bennis, Tito Martinez, on and on and on. Jim Abbott. I'm not so sure a lot of those guys even, you think Barry Bonds would have gone to Arizona State in 84? It was Bonds, Devereaux, and O.W. McDowell in the outfield. And Louis Medina, and 5 or 6 minorities playing and great players. I beg anybody to find anything close to that now. So how did that happen? It's been a 25, 30-year evolution, in my opinion, the wrong way. And a lot of our great athletes aren't playing that used to play and love it. Dusty Baker and I are friends. I hired Dusty as the manager of the Cubs my first year as GM, and we've had, hundreds of hours to chat about this, and the guy that's not in it like you guys are, or not in the amateur world, it's hard for them to understand, like, well, where'd the black kids go? Or, how come, these guys come up, they're not really ready to play in the big leagues. We gotta still coach them more. You know what I'm saying? So the whole thing is a process that I think has lacked the development that we would all aspire to have again. And I'm not trying to compare eras or anything like that. I know I'm an older guy getting near the end, and I want the game to be better than the way I used to think it was great. But I am afraid that the damage we've done, and I don't have any problem. I'm not talking on a school blaming the NCAA. I think they've done damage that's really been hurtful for a few decades.
No doubt. Well, Jim, why don't we, if we could transition and talk a little bit about the draft and how you guys currently evaluate players and potentially try to kind of bridge the gap between these guys that are on this call that are coaching and involved in the lives of those players. If you could just talk about that for a little bit, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, sorry, I got a little long wind on that.
No, you're fine.
Well, the draft's coming up. I've been in the last, I guess, draft room for 31 or 2 years straight. I ran 5 drafts for the Cubs, and I've been with the Yankees now. This is my 12th year. It's changed. The world's changed. I still love the draft, and we can get into the differences a little bit then and now. Obviously, it's changed. The way the world is now. It's more analytic. Some clubs are more analytic than others. I feel the value of analytics is very important. Me a little bit, maybe this is the old school, more of the higher levels in the draft. I think you still need great scouts and eyes at the park for a great portion of the draft importance. We have a great scouting director, Damon Oppenheimer. We have one guy that really helps us from an analytic point of view, but he's been with us a while. It's a good balance. I think the world is scouted so differently now. Some for the good, some for the bad. There's no secrets anymore. There's no, hiding the guy out in the bayou in Louisiana and taking, Toe Nash in the 19th round or whatever, and he plays in the big leagues or whatever. It's like everybody knows everybody. And you see that with what you do. I mean, kids are committing to college now in the 8th and 9th grade. I mean, that was really I remember some of my best players at Creighton, Alan Bennis, Scott Stahoviak, they recruited they committed the fall of their senior year. Now that's unheard of. That's the guy that gets left out, no chair. So that's changed. I think the importance of the area scout is just how the boss runs it. We put a lot of value in our area scouts. We give them a lot of responsibility. I think a lot of clubs, I think the area guys become like an information gatherer and doesn't get to maybe sharpen his skills. We live in a terribly overly cross-checked world, and everybody does that. The old days it was, your area guy and this regional guy, and then the scouting director, or maybe the national. You might 3 or 4 people see a guy, and you didn't really. I remember we used to start heavy scouting at the area code games the summer before their senior year. Now it's, like I said, it's a 3 or 4 year process, which is better. I mean, our scouts get to know the kids better. They get to know the makeup better. I'm sure you have a lot of interaction with a lot of scouts. in the summers, and that's all important. And a lot of clubs like us, Damon Oppenheimer, I don't know anybody that's been doing it as long as him. He's 250, 270 on the road every year. Fall ball's over, he's going to visit 30 kids' schools or houses himself in the winter. I think that's all great. Now, you have this, everybody has a mental strength coach. You want your guys, the better guys, to meet with him. I think the combine's been a good idea the last couple of years, and I think MLB's done a good job with that. And we all have our criticisms of MLB at times. I think that's been good. The interviews have been great. Medical information is imperative. I mean, the money's so big now at the higher rounds, you can't afford to whiff, on the medical, and you do the best you can. So I think that there's been a lot of improvement in some things, and I don't see a lot of negatives, except maybe the area guys, maybe don't have the importance for some teams, not us. Damon guys are highly, but I think that's bad, because I think you want, just like we want players to develop, you want scouts to develop. And I think a lot of clubs are cutting back in scouts, which I think is sad, and it becomes video and all the numbers. And I don't think you can ever do without the eyes in the stands and the human element part of it, and getting back to my amateur situation, some of the clubs that don't value the continual eyes at the park, I just never understand, and I think some of you guys on this have coached, obviously, and played, if you go by just like exit velocity, launch angle, spin rates, whatever, you take Jim Hendry from Spring Hill College, I'm going to have as good an exit velo off the pitch and I'm seeing without big league skills. But if you put me at Friday night at LSU and it's NOLA, or at Gainesville, and it's Singer, and you're not going to get any exit velo because I'm not going to hit them. You know what I mean? But the numbers seem to get kind of lumped together. You know what I'm saying? It's like, a lot of times analysts would say, well, what about the guy at that small school in North Carolina? Well, he's facing, guys that are never going to, kind of ever pitch in rookie league, So that part of, to me, that's why in the amateur world, I think the scouting is even more important. And don't get me wrong, there are certain, like a case I remember a couple of years ago in our room, I won't name the name, but I really wanted this kid, in the third, fourth round SEC player, which has obviously been the best conference for drafts by far the last 10 years. And I was kind of still pushing, and I knew he struck out a lot, but he had power. He's a good athlete. He had big league tools. And finally, our guy said, Jim, the analyst, Scott Bennick, he said, Jim, I'm sure he's a good player, but let me give you a number you might want to pay attention to. And he said, in the last 10 years, anybody that swung and missed as much as he has in the SEC has never played every day in the big leagues. You better listen to that. That goes past my nature is, we're always looking for big league tools, and that's still important. You have to be able to project tools, and you have to project deliveries and somewhat project people you don't think will break down on the mound. But you better pay attention to certain things. And I think that's where, the game's improved, and the statistical analysis and analytics have made it better. You just have to have that good balance. But it's getting back to the differences too. It's like, back then nobody talked. Now it's kind of like the social media and the mock drafts and all that. I mean, we sit in that room, and the old days, like the first round column, you get under your work for a week to put the board up, and you got 300 guys ranked. Heck, in the old days, you might be down picking at 26 or 7, and you still got 7 or 8 cats on the wall in your first round column. Now you'd be shocked. Like a lot of times, like if you put all the mock drafts together, that guys that you might respect or they're doing their work, there might be 28 out of 30 gone, of the first 30, and somewhat in kind of a, the first 15, or like 13 of the first 15 were like everybody said would be. So I think a lot of that comes from, people talk more than they used to, in the old days. I remember John Sherrills told me once, he goes, hey, if anything ever leaked out of my room, that's the guy's last day of working. I just think it's not that people are intentionally doing it, but I just think that so many people are digging for info that I think some guys on certain teams might volunteer what they heard that the Oakland guy told. You know what I mean? So over time, a lot of stuff is a lot more in the public eye than it ever used to be. It used to be kind of more secretive, and all of a sudden there'd be a shocker, and Art Stewart would shock us at the first round pick from Kansas City, but that's a big difference. And I'm not saying that's bad, but if I was running, I'd like my guys not to talk, but and some of it just those guys do their work too. I mean, you see guys that are writers and Baseball America guys at a lot more games than you would have ever dreamed of years ago, because there wasn't a lot of social media. So that's a big difference, and the money's changed. I mean, the pool money is really changed. It's changed the way people approach it. And what happens now is, the old days, and I still believe in this. What is the purpose of the draft? It's the worst teams are supposed to be able to pick, in their opinion. And obviously, there's Ryan Leafs of the world. They're not the best player, but they're picked. But the worst teams are supposed to pick the best players. Well, what happens now with the pool money, and it's so, unbalanced, and they're trying to help the clubs get better, and I appreciate that. But what you have is a constant orchestration, even on draft day, of agents knowing they're working deals behind where you pick to get more money with somebody the next time around, sandwich pick, second round, or between the second and the third, because they know they can get more money, and they have deals in place before you ever pick. And I still have a problem with that. And I do our signings for Damon. I do all the contracts of the draft. So there's a few stories in the draft room that if you talk to the Yankees, I'll get those calls. And I'll say, really, we're the freaking New York Yankees. When it's our turn to pick, we're going to pick who the hell we want. If you don't want to sign, that's you and his business. But nobody's talking us off a guy because you got a better deal behind us. I think that's counterproductive of what the draft's supposed to be, and very counterproductive of what the pool money was supposed to be used for. You know what I'm saying? So then, without realizing it, everybody ends up getting in the middle of it a little bit. We're in the fourth round, and we'll get a call like, hey, Billy'd like to play for the you guys. I mean, it's just, so you take the call. It doesn't always, what I mean? So it happens. I'm not trying to ostracize somebody that plays that game, but I do believe when it's your turn to pick, you should pick the guy you want. And if you back off of that because somebody has a better deal behind you, over time, nobody's going to care, why you got out of that pick or why you didn't. And it's if you got it wrong. So if you pass on a guy you really wanted and he ends up being a better player than the guy you took because of you got talked off the money, then shame on you. You've hurt your team, so, but I do think we still need a better, it's not difficult in the draft in football and basketball. You got a very small window to negotiate. In NFL, what do you negotiate? Whether you give them the fourth or fifth year option, the window of total money is $1 million or $2 million. You're going to fight over 20 guaranteed. In our sport, it's the first guy gets $8 million, and the bottom of the first round, the guy may get $2 million. Yep. So that's how you see the manipulation, of it all because of the pool money. Now, if somebody does a great job, like the year Houston, took Correa one and saved the money to get McCullers, that's just really good work. You know what I mean? And Correa was better than a lot of people. I don't know if Correa goes in the first 5 or 6 for anybody else. So good for them. That's good. Braves did the same thing when they took Anderson up 2 or 3. Nobody would take an Anderson up that high, but they used the money and got that smart use of the pool money. You got to go by the rules and the money they give you. But there's so much, I wouldn't call it dirty, but there's so much manipulation. And then the agents will sometimes throw temper tantrums when you take the guy because they know we're going to give the college guy whatever the slot type of deal is. And they could have got another 500,000, 15 picks later. But to me, that's not the draft. So that's still a big problem for me, where I don't understand in the CBA why we can't make it more like the other sports. There's plenty of money to go around, and the 43rd pick shouldn't get more than the 23rd pick unless it's, he's a high school kid and this guy's a college guy, So that's kind of one of the negatives. The other things are, there's a lot of positives, and not everything I'm talking about is worse now than it used to be. There's a lot of things that are better in the game now. Guys are trained better. Guys take it more seriously. Their conditioning in the off season, nobody comes to shape. I mean, somebody comes out of shape nowadays, it's an anomaly. If somebody comes in a big league camp and they're not in shape, I mean, that's, what I mean? So there's so much money to be made, guys, or it's a year round thing, so.
Another question that popped up, Jim, the question reads, what can we do at the travel ball level to make Major League Baseball organizations' jobs easier and make them to prefer to work with us and our players? So essentially, like, is there information that you guys are looking for, whether it's at the, whether it's at the area scout level, or it's at the cross checker level? I know a lot of these guys that are on this have relationships with, cross checkers and obviously area scouts, but is there anything in particular, when these guys have draftable players, information that is important to you guys that they can get to you, especially a lot of these guys are coaching these kids from the time they're 14 to the time they're draft eligible. Like, what are some ideas of some ways that they can better monitor their players and get you information that can help?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it, just I'm getting a sense from the way it started that a lot of you guys are high character guys and they're not going to BS people. I think the best thing you can do is tell the truth, and obviously establish a relationship with the scouts, and we're all human. If certain scouts treat you better, then I would fully expect you to have a better relationship with them. You don't owe everybody information if a guy doesn't do it professionally or ask for it professionally. There's a lot of great scouts that love kids, and there's a lot of guys that, they're not, they're interested in getting info from you and not returning the favors. But I think it has to be a mutual thing. I think the best way you can help is just to develop the guys the best you can. I know it's not, I shouldn't say coach them hard, but I mean, we all have, like, I go to a lot of games, for 2.5 months for the draft. And, you get a little tired of the guys that, they don't play hard. They don't run the balls out. They don't get to first base. Guys carry their bat to first base. I mean, there's a fine line. I know you want to have your best players, but I think you will help them by making them play right and play hard and, respect their teammates, which is, getting harder and harder to do when guys are now getting 150 grand to transfer schools after they just, batted third every day in the lineup and then they're leaving. They're the Friday night guy and they're leaving. So you guys have a tougher job now coming too, because I'm sure you have a lot of outside noise, and I don't think a lot of pro guys appreciate that I'm sure you've had these kids for a long time, and then all of a sudden maybe somebody else is helping them because somebody's the friend told the dad that this guy knows more about hitting than you do, so we all deal with it in different stages. I hope you don't have it much, but so I just think you do the best you can. I'm sure you convey the way you act and operate and coach every day that you have their best interests at heart, but that also includes life lessons. That all includes how to act, how to treat teammates, how to respect the game, how to respect you as coaches. So I'm sure you're not too tolerant of that, and that's a good thing. So I would say, philosophically, I know this group stands for a lot and keep doing what you're doing. But you don't owe certain teams certain information. You don't owe them or any of us personal information you may know about the kid. If you feel like it's pertinent and the kid's not being himself because there's something bothering him, if you feel that's appropriate, that's good. But you also need to keep the relationship you have with the kid and know he can trust you, and you're not obligated to tell everybody everything. These guys get paid to find out on their own and observe and watch his kids for 2 or 3 years and get to know them on their own time. Don't do their work for them either. You know what I mean? Everybody knows who the good players are now from 9th grade on. Yep. So let that scout drive extra and go see Billy play basketball in the winter or football in the fall, and drive 3 out of his way to go meet the parents in the winter. He's got to do his own work too. It's not like, hey, a month before the draft, hey, I'm going to be nice to this guy. And, we get along all right. I'm going to go get the info. And then I'm going to write my stuff down about his makeup based on what you tell him. I'm not a fan of that either. You guys you put the work in and, tell them what they need to know. And if you can help the kid by being honest, but maybe share some things that what he's going through that might help him, then that's good. But don't do their work for him either.
Great. Another question we've got. So obviously with the NIL stuff that's starting to flow into the game, we're lucky we've got a former college AD on this call, and he was actually just at the National Athletic Director Conference in Vegas, and he shared with me this good information for the whole group that we're starting to hear a lot in our world about guys getting NIL deals. Currently, 90% of the money is flowing to football, women's basketball, and men's basketball. So there is money in baseball, and obviously at the Power 5 level. We're starting to see the upper echelon of players get that. So for you on the pro side, do you foresee a circumstance where you guys might be fighting against the college game to get guys to sign, in those middle rounds, guys that could go, potentially might sign for $750, but they can go to LSU and make $150 a year for that time.
Yeah.
How do you see that affecting what you guys are doing now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's going to happen. I think you have to kind of get back to what I said philosophically earlier, that I don't have a problem at all. A kid should not sign professionally just for money. Now it's different, you almost have to in the first round or whatever. But if a kid doesn't really think he's ready or doesn't want to sign, and it's the middle rounds and it's okay, it's $600,000 and he's getting money. I don't think there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I'm not going, the only thing that bothers the professional side from my end is if they don't tell you they really didn't want to go, and maybe somebody, their dad or the kid just wanted to see how high it was going, so he strings people along. There's nothing wrong. Like the kid at LSU, he's going to be in the first 5 picks, Nick Cruz. He took himself out of the draft. That's no stigma.
Yeah, so, I know that Pitt kid pretty well. He hit with me from the time he was 13 years old. So.
Yeah. So you know what I'm saying? But he did it the right way. He for whatever reason, nobody should make you sign or not sign based on money. But the NIL thing, it's going to be a problem. And the other problem is combine the NIL, the portal's going to be a huge problem. Right on top of the COVID now, and we all weren't. It all hit us by storm. In hindsight, I think the NCAA probably should have given the extra year to just the seniors, because the real good players, they're going to sign after their junior year anyhow. Okay. So what's happened now, and very harmful to kids, I didn't tie this in before, is if you looked at a lot of the teams this year, they played 23-year-olds all the time. There were the starting pitcher on one of the College World Series team was 24 and a half. Okay. So that kid that's deciding, like you said, LSU or get some money or get 600. He's now, a lot of those guys are going to school and they're going to watch for a while. You know what I'm saying? Let's be real honest. At the higher level schools, at the big conferences, coaches are making a lot of money now and they've got to win. So I don't blame a guy for you've got 5 23-year-olds playing. You got a better chance of winning than playing 5 19-year-olds, unless it's that elite level that slipped through the cracks and they went to school. So that's going to cause a problem now for a few more years. And the portal's making that worse, because I know guys that aren't even recruiting anymore, like kids for next year or the year after. They're just going in the portal. Little Billy's upset over here, so I'm not at the SEC level, but I'm just going to recruit out the portal. And then all of a sudden, the kid that sat waiting his turn a freshman year, that maybe was a 15th round draft and he, didn't play much. And all of a sudden now you got the junior, senior shortstop that you got out of the portal that now you're going to wait another year. And then, you know what I'm saying? So the backlog to me is disturbing, because I don't think college baseball was meant to be for the 23 to 24-year-olds. And I'm not criticizing the coaches that played them, but I think I did go to probably 2/3 of the World Series games, and there weren't too many young teams. You know what I mean? A lot of 23-year-olds, and let's be honest, a lot of those guys are never getting out of A-ball. But if you've got pressure to win and you're making over $1 million a year in the SEC to coach, Billy's going to have to wait another year to play. You know what I mean? So it's a bad catch-22. That's why also I would like to see the junior colleges get better. And at the same time, you know, the other thing that's bothersome to me is so many colleges bitch about, you know, they don't have this, they don't have that. And we're giving out all these, you know, automatic bids to get the 64 teams. Well, the problem I have with that is there's a bunch of teams getting bids that the school isn't even close to halfway funding the 11-7 limit. There were teams in the NCAA tournament this year getting like 4 to 6 scholarships, you know? So, and playing a bad schedule, but they won their, you know, 28th ranked conference and got a bid. So it's all, I got off track a little bit there, but it's all encompassing of, you know, if we're going to do it to have 64 instead of 48, let's put the best 64 in. You know what I mean? And the best 64 then could attract, if you're a good school, but you're not getting bids, but some of these other schools are, that's hurting you from getting some of these younger kids to go to your school instead of a kid sitting at a little better school and getting replaced by the portal kid. Yeah, but the NFL is going to be, you're right. It's not going to be for everybody, but as we speak, we are getting guys recruiting Friday night starters off of real good programs that really should have no reason to leave, but they're going to.
Yep.
To me, and to me, that's where we lose it starts at your level. What lessons are we really teaching these kids? You know, the rest of your life, somebody's loyal to you, you just stab them in the back anytime you want for the next $5,000 more at your job. Or, you know, if you don't get your way, let me get out of it. I know 2 or 3 college guys that told our scouts this week, they were on their way to the Cape Cod, not to see their players. Today's the last day you can enter the portal. Go into the Cape this week to talk to kids about getting the portal before today. I think that's sick. Yeah. You know, I got a problem with guys recruiting guys off of somebody else's campus that have no reason to leave. I mean, Friday night starters are leaving schools, and they'll come out in the next week that you'll be shocked. Like, why would he leave there? There's no hassle there. Coach is not a bad guy. They got a good program. They got a bid last year. We're getting teams that are losing guys that are starters that got bids last year and played in the supers.